Here are some more examples of ways that you can do it in class with them. Dedicate some class time. I think this is important. If you're believing that English is an important skill for them to have, you should find ways for them to do it. It's a little bit out of order, actually. Some of these are easy and some are hard. So having them give, actually this is the easiest one, having them just talk to their partner and then giving a brief presentation right there in the spot, like not in front of everybody else. Just stand up, give a presentation to your partner. That's an easy one. Everyone can do it. You can practice without being too much embarrassment. But some of these are much harder, where they have to come to the front of the room and give a speech. That's a little harder to for them to say, yes, I want to do that. But it is necessary, right? Giving a speech where you're speaking in that other language is exactly what you're going to have to do when you're working for a company and now you're communicating on a conference call to someone in another country and the only language you share is English. That is exactly the same level of anxiety. They need that practice here when they can make mistakes. Small group presentations. This one, impromptu, means speaking without practicing. So it would be like going to a student, you come up front right now and give me a talk in English for 5 minutes about soccer in Saudi Arabia. So that's very hard to do, right, in another language. So that's a hard one, but you would do it for advanced students. And then this one about video refers to students maybe a little bit more shy can take a video at home of their English, and you can then grade their presentations that way. Exit ticket I probably should remove from this list here because that refers to them submitting a video as their way leaving the lecture hall. That's not a very common one when it's not your country. Okay, and then what I was going to show you here was an example that I found on YouTube which talks about ways that it gives you the skills of how to give a good presentation. The video itself is in English, but it is explaining ways to give a good presentation, and then that can be something that is a model for them in delivering a next presentation. The version of this that will be available when I leave back for America, I have to leave a version of this. I'll put the video link back there. I originally was going to show it to you in class here, but there's an audio problem in the room, so I just took out the link. It'll be on the final version. I understand it is now time for the 30-minute lunch and prayer, so I will see you back in 30 minutes. We're going to make a switch here to also talk about written communication. And I remember taking the picture that you see at the bottom of the slide here. I actually don't remember anymore what it was. What does this say? CC and BCC. Okay. Hidden, okay. I had wanted something, because I knew the audience here, I wanted something that looked like written communication in Arabic. And the way I did it is I told Gmail, this is the Gmail website, to switch my entire interface to Arabic for a moment so I could capture this picture. Kind of the opposite of exactly what we just said about practicing English a moment ago. I thought I was being very clever, so I switched the interface and I took this picture and then I saved it, and then I had a problem because my interface was in Arabic and I could not read it to change it back to English. So I had to try different things until eventually I was able to switch my interface back to English. To just share it as a fun story when we're talking about immersion, it can backfire as it did on me. So as we talk about teaching English, again, the concept being that the students must receive instruction about writing in English as though it were a topic just to learn next to your regular topic. How is writing different in the workplace environment than in the college environment? So maybe let's start there. What kind of writing do we think is problematic for students when they get to the workplace?
Technical writing.
Technical writing will be difficult for them in English. Yep. Anything else? Just making grammar mistakes, yes, throughout. Good. Email communications actually does come up. And the reason it's a problem is that the students either have one of two problems associated with brevity. Either the students have no practice in taking their long thoughts and making them short, so the words are too long, or they are only saying very simple things and not able to expand to the appropriate depth, right? So they're either too brief or too long. And so the students, when they reach the workplace, have problems with the right length. And then evidence as well, what counts as evidence will vary based on who the audience is. So that one we need to think about for just a second. Whenever they do writing in an academic setting, when they do writing in a course, who is the audience for that? It's almost always you, the teacher, right? That's the audience. And we tell the students this. And they never get any practice thinking about other audiences. Well, let's say that they are now writing a report. They work for a government agency. They write a report. I assume that reports for government agencies also go on the internet. They do in my country anyway. So a report needs to have an audience of the people who are going to verify we did the work, but then also the general public, right? The people who might be interested in this. So the students would need to think about evidence and how I explain evidence based on the audience. If it's the teacher, I don't have to explain certain things. The teacher knows it, of course. But if I'm writing for an audience that will include the general public, they might have to explain things that a teacher would take for granted. And they have no experience with that. So that suggests a very concrete thing we as teachers should do at the college level, which is give them writing opportunities where they switch audience. Move them away from the audience of just the teacher toward a different audience, like the general public who does not know the special terms. Or, you can do fun things that are a variation of that, right? So what is a complicated concept in something that you teach? Give me a complicated idea. Quantum mechanics. Okay. I thought it was going to be a little less complicated than that one. This is quite complicated. Because this is going to be hard using the example I was about to say. I was about to say, explain quantum mechanics to your 8-year-old brother. It might be a little hard with quantum mechanics. So yesterday I had computer science folks in the room, and there's a concept in computer science called pipelining, which is how memory is allocated as they solve problems for the computer processor. Pipelining is a subject you could make and explain to an 8-year-old. You use small words and more sentences to explain the concept and use a metaphor or a simile so it's more obvious what it looks like. So that kind of writing is just switching the audience. Okay, and so that's what I mean by ideal assignments, is where you provide an opportunity for them to do thinking differently. Now what about thinking differently about audience? Now what happens when people don't want to give writing assignments? Sometimes I talk to faculty who say, I don't give writing assignments because I'm not a writing teacher. Like I don't know how to grade writing exactly. And then another example of reasons why people might not want to give writing is maybe your own English is not perfect, right? And if your own English is not perfect, you might not want to be the one responsible for making their English perfect. So in both cases, what is suggested is that you still give writing assignments, but only focus on things that you feel confident you can grade, like the ability to organize the thinking, like the ability to address the audience around the concept you're trying to have them explain. Don't worry, if you don't want to grade grammar, then don't grade the grammar. It's still important for them to have practice doing the writing, where the writing means explaining concepts, thinking about audience, thinking about evidence, rather than just always being perfect with the explanations. And I really would not worry about grammar, even if you have good grammar. It's really not that useful, even for native speakers of English. It's not that useful to give grammar explanations for why this is wrong. So there's a concept out there called like a dangling modifier. It's a grammar term that means that they've introduced a subject, but then they've changed it in the middle. So if I were to say, like every mother who has ever given birth to a child, I know pain when I see it. That's wrong because I'm not a mother who's given birth to a child, right? Okay, so that's a technical term, is a dangling modifier. But you don't need to know that. All you need to know is this is wrong or it's awkward or something like that. So I encourage you to teach writing and think about and make sure that you grade them only on the things that matter to them. That is the explanation of things. So I'm going to keep talking while I hand something out here. And, oh wait, do I want to? Yeah, okay. I think I will hand this out now. This is for this side here. And then on the, this side, I might not quite have enough. So when you can, please try to share one of these handouts on the men's side with someone next to you. But don't look at the handouts yet. Just sort of give them out. I am going to talk first about what's on the screen. Okay, so I'm going to go through a few different screens of interactive techniques. What's that? It is a very big handout. Don't look at it yet. You're all looking at the handout. This is why I don't give handouts early, but there's so many people in the room that I had to start. What's on this first screen is, as it says, individual students. These are ways individual students can get practice doing either writing or speaking. I think these are all writing. No, the second one's speaking. So I'm going to go through them one at a time here. The 1-minute paper is a fancy term for grab scratch paper and do something and for the moment. As it turns out, I've been doing this with you all morning long. You have seen examples of me saying stop and then on your paper make a list or draw a picture. These are all versions of the 1-minute paper, okay? So it's an opportunity to practice language just by stopping and having them fill something out. The second one, why do you think that? Every time a student gives you a response, you use those words. Why do you think that? So it's a physics class. I say, hold on, I'm going to close this door here. So I tell the students, why is the sky blue? And the student says, well, that's because of the scattering effect, which they read in the textbook, right? That's why the sky is blue. And you ask them, well, why do you think that? Why do you think that the scattering effect is making the sky blue? You see how that forces them to give a much deeper answer to the understanding of the question. At first it was just a label, but they didn't really necessarily understand what it was. So it has two benefits. Number one, it makes them practice their English. And number two, it makes them have a fuller defense of the material, make sure they really understand what it is. The third one, recall, summarize, question, comment. We actually did that also. Do you remember when we came back from the first break and I sort of took suggestions for what do we talk about in the first hour? And you gave me ideas. That is an example of this activity where you do some of these. You just have people remember and then make a little list and then summarize it and then connect it to other things. So that one happened with a conversation between us, but it could have just said do all of that on a piece of paper as a form of practice. The second slide is about students working in teams. And the first item on it, think, pair, share, is another fancy term for something that some of you probably do, right? Where you have the students first think about an idea and then they turn to a partner and they work with their partner and talk about it. How many of you do something like this in your class where you have the students how many of you have your students talk to other students? I'm seeing more hands on this side than I am on this side. So I have to stop for here just for a second. And I hope I don't offend when I say this. We have bigger problems on our hands than learning 21st century learning skills. If the students are listening to a lecture for 50 minutes long, they are not learning your content, guys. They're not learning it.
We cannot actually give them listening for 45 minutes or even half an hour. We have to have a lot of interruptions in different directions, asking questions.
I would agree with you. I think that's better practice, that you have lots of interruptions and if your class at the moment is a lot of you talking and that's fine, there can be a lot of it. I've been talking a lot today too. There have to be moments of interruption where they work individual, They work in pairs or they work in groups. If you don't do these interruptions, they stop paying attention, number one, and number two, you have no time where they are practicing the material, right? Teaching equals content, practice, assessment. Where's the practice? It's got to happen in the class. So even separate from this 21st century skills stuff, I hope you take away this message. Right? Your classes need to become, if you're not there now, you need to become more interactive.
But I have a question. If you become more interactive in the class, talking, the teacher gets distracted. Those discussions can be kept after the class.
The teacher gets distracted. What do you mean?
When I'm teaching and they're discussing instead of listening to me, then there's the distraction.
Oh, that's not a distraction from the teacher. This is a moment where the students are supposed to be learning from each other. That's not a distraction. They are still learning. They're just not learning from me. Not all learning in the classroom happens because I say it. Some of it happens because you're doing work by yourself and you make a discovery, a connection in your brain. Sometimes it happens because you talk to somebody else. Earlier we said that 3 heads are better than 1, right? So the learning is supposed to happen in the room. It just doesn't mean that I said it. So you're going to hear me say something about PowerPoint a little later that goes in this direction as well. But
there is one main point actually. This is the limits also in the class size. If you have a small class size, you have too much interaction. You can do all of them.
Yes, class teacher
Then
issue.
you are proposing. But when you have a big class with a big number of students, it is just more focusing from one side is always suitable to make the class more quiet.
how large is a big class in your mind?
Big class maybe like over 100.
Over 100. Okay, so I agree with you that if you have classes over 100, that does change how you would do certain things. Some of these ideas that we're going to talk about are difficult to do with over 100. I would still have interruptions where they have to work individually and sometimes with pairs. It makes the room very noisy and it's hard to get their attention again, but it is worthwhile doing. I think it is worthwhile doing. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of these because you'll see them again on the list that when we talk about it. And neither will I go through all of those individually except to say that these are powerful tools you can use to have the students learn from each other first and then spread their knowledge and teach it to other students in the room. These are very engaging days when you have entire group activities like this. What I do want to make sure that I spend time doing is make sure that you have a look at the handout that you see in front of you. And those of you who do not have a physical handout, because we might have run out, there is a link on the screen where you can get the digital version of this same handout. In fact, the font is a little small the way they photocopied it. So the font is not small like that in the original handout. It's 28 pages, I think, long. So if anybody wants to get the original, the URL is up there. And in fact, as you see at the bottom, there is a version of the same list in Arabic. That is because I taught a training like this at King Saud University, and they asked for permission to translate the list. So they translated the list, and I said yes, as long as I can use it in other places. So you have the benefit of the Arabic translation if you want to see that as well. The list. Excuse me. Let's talk about how you would use this list for a second. Just looking at it, you see that it is a very long list of possible ideas where you could be interactive with the students. You have them, many of them are useful for practicing spoken or written English. And the list is much longer than you could do at any one time. So the way to treat this list is to come up with ideas for when you would take breaks in a classroom. So to understand that, maybe I need to talk about something different here. We said that a class period is 50 minutes, right? That's a long time to listen. And we said that you can probably listen without daydreaming for about 15 minutes. So you should actually approach your plan for one day by thinking about 15-minute chunks that are interrupted by an activity, a small activity. That's what these are. Okay, so again, a real lesson should look like that. 15-minute lecture, one of these things. And then another 15-minute lecture, another one of these things in this list. Oh, thank you. and then maybe a little lecture at the end. So you should have 2 or 3 or 4 of these little activities all in 1 hour. And then what you do is you just look at the nature of the things you're going to talk about in today's class, and then you come to the list and you find one that would be a good fit for what you're trying to do in those 15 minutes. And the exercise can be having them practice what you just taught them, or it could also be having them guess at something you haven't taught yet. You remember all the way back at the beginning of today I made you guess about the answer slide? Right? Guessing can be very useful. So, any one of these topics, so we had the 1-minute paper up there, right? If you're about to lecture on something brand new, you could ask them to write a 1-minute paper about everything they know about that topic you're about to lecture on. That would be useful. Have them make a list of all the things that they think is true of this. And then when you start lecturing, they'll recognize some of that is wrong. So this is actually a really powerful list. I don't know if, it's hard to tell whether you're excited or don't care about the list, but I've been gathering this list since 1992. It's been a long time building this list. So I hope that you do use it, and I hope that you share it with other people. It's not listed at the bottom. In the real version, it says that you're allowed to share this list. So you can share this list with other people and use it in your teaching. And we hope you do. Do you have any questions about using the list or simply using activities to give them practice speaking or practice writing? None so far? Okay. That brings us to takeaway number 4. Again, one of my very important green conclusion bullets. In this case, I think it's not enough that we give them content about the soft skills. I think you also have to dedicate classroom time to practice the soft skills. They will not get there simply by reading about teamwork. And they might not even get there simply given an assignment about teamwork. You need to have classroom time to practice these things. They can be role plays or scenarios or case studies or anything in this long list. The list is really just to give you ideas for ways to practice it. And I agree that some of the things in the list are maybe not everybody's style. There's an item in the list that's, some of the items are very creative. Like turn something very complicated into something you would put on a bumper sticker. Or haiku. Remember we wrote a poem earlier. That's in this list. I don't know what number it is, but haiku is in this list to have them practice it. And so you get hopefully by modeling it, you got a sense for how it can be useful. All right, so not corresponding with the breaks, but our third part will be about professionalism and then digital dexterity, using digital technologies and modern technologies in their work. This is an important slide, and so I'm going to take a few moments to talk about the elements on it. The employers all say that they want professional behavior from the students, and they don't say exactly what that is, but this is an attempt to break down what professional behavior looks like. And starting at the bottom, a professional creates boundaries, does not treat every moment like it's an informal moment. And the employers specifically report informality as the problem, that our students, when they graduate, do not recognize it's a moment to be formal in interactions and assume that it's always okay to be quote-unquote friends with everybody. Creates an atmosphere of improvement and personal growth are very similar to each other. And the employers are reporting that many students, by the time they graduate, are content to simply work in the job. They don't have that 5-year plan we talked about earlier, nor do they have a sense that they need to keep growing. There's not a hunger or a desire to continue growing. Have any of you heard of something called growth mindset? It's a way of thinking about the world that is different from feeling like this is all that I am and I can never be any bigger than this. So this is called a fixed mindset, where you believe that intelligence is fixed. I can't get any smarter. Growth mindset actually says you can get smarter, you can get better. Let's take something like basketball, like shooting basketball hoops. A fixed mindset would be someone who says like, I'm just not good at this, and they, other people are good at this, I'm not, and they just give up. So in the book about growth mindsets, the author uses the case example of Michael Jordan, who was a big basketball star for many years. And Michael Jordan did not make his high school basketball team. He was not good enough to make his high school basketball team. He could not make free throws. And so he threw, tens of thousands of free throws over his life. He got better. He has a growth mindset. The ability to recognize that failure does not mean I can't do it. Failure means that way didn't work. Let me try a different way of doing it because I can do this with enough practice. A belief that you can do it with enough practice and get better and do it. Okay? Really, it's a belief that you can do anything, that you can learn to do anything. The only way I'm fixed mindset is when it comes to singing. I don't think I can sing, but maybe I just haven't met the right teacher yet. Responsibility and ownership of a problem. Clearly, that is professional behavior. It's related to leadership. We talked about leadership feeling like you own the problem. Conflict resolution we've talked about as professionalism. And then, of course, the students become more satisfied when the other features are fulfilled. Okay, oops, I did not give this one out earlier. This is another handout. I think both sides of the room are going to have to share this handout. So it is only every other person who can have one of the handouts. Don't take one of your own unless there's extras at the end. And in fact, you can also look just at the screen. You don't even need the handout necessarily. You can just see the screen and do the same activity on your own piece of paper. So here is the task. I think it's made more clear on the handout than it is on the screen, but this is a model that does not come from research. This is something that I built by myself, and I was trying to figure out all of the things a teacher tries to pay attention to. And you see the list of those things here alphabetically on the side. The teacher tries to make sure there's assessment, tries to make a good classroom atmosphere, tries to lay out expectations for student behavior. By logic, what I mean is the way I explain my content, the way my lecture unfolds, the logic of my lecture. Okay? So paying attention to the logic of the lecture. Practice is giving the students practice. Scaffolding, I might need to explain. Scaffolding is what you see on the outside of a building when it's being constructed. It's like the temporary wood and planks that they use to build a building upwards from the outside. So what it really means is, in education, you start at the foundation and then you only build one step at a time. Very carefully, only one step. Not 10 steps at a time, just one step at a time. That's scaffolding. Okay? And then variety, we just talked about that interactive techniques list where the students need variety in their teaching, in their classroom experience, or else they start to get bored. So the task I'm asking you to perform is to put them in order in the pyramid, where the thing that goes at the bottom is the most important. This is the foundation. The thing the teachers should pay the most attention to should go at the bottom. And then the things that you pay the least attention to should go at the top. Okay? So you can feel free to fill this out one at a time or in a group of two. Feel free to have a discussion about it and give you a couple of minutes to figure out what goes where in the pyramid. What did you put on the bottom level, the most important to pay attention to? Atmosphere? The tone, and okay, that's atmosphere. I just realized that the handout doesn't use atmosphere on it, but what else? Expectations. And what? Practice, okay. On this side, what did you, expectations, atmosphere, expectations again, yeah, okay, good. What goes at the very top? What do you think might take care of itself if everything else is in place? Assessment, practice, practice, variety, okay. I disagree with variety especially, actually, because that never takes care of itself. Here's my answer. Now let me explain how I got there, or why I believe these things. So atmosphere refers to the tone and the attitude that it says in the handout, what the classroom feels like. The reason I put this at the very bottom as the most important, most foundational thing in teaching is that if everything else is perfect, if you give great lectures that do one step at a time, and the logic of your lectures is perfectly explained, and the students hate you, then it won't matter how good your explanations are. They hate coming to class. They're never going to speak out loud because it's a bad environment. Then all the learning, all the things you try to do for learning are not going to work. The atmosphere has to be in place. It has to be a learning atmosphere, a learning-focused atmosphere, or else the rest of it is a waste of time. The second one up from there is expectations, which in my mind has to do with classroom management, right? I expect you to be in class, and I expect you to be paying attention. That means that I have certain rules. No, you can't use laptops, you can't use cell phones, or whatever your rules are, right? Your classroom rules dictate the level of expectation. Also, that you have high expectations for their performance is tied in with this, right? That you expect good work and you model good work for them so that when they turn it in and they deliver good work, then they have met your high expectations. These two together are actually professionalism. That's what it's doing in this conversation about 21st century skills. This is modeling professionalism for our students in the environment that we control. Then the next step that you need to make explicit to the students is that I have been modeling this, that everything you're seeing here is what you should be displaying when you get to a workplace environment as well. Be respectful of me means don't use your phone or whisper to other people. You should be doing the same things in the workplace environment. And remember earlier when I said that giving them modeling and content can happen in the syllabus? This is what I was thinking of, that we give syllabus policies that explain what professional behavior looks like. And so the content of professionalism, right? If we're going to teach, well, let's back up. If we're going to have them have these skills, we have to teach it to them, right? And we said it's not somebody else's job, it's my job to teach it to them, right? And if I'm going to teach it to them, teaching equals CPA, content practice assessment. So the content of professionalism can be these things about expectations and atmosphere. It can be the very things that are on your syllabus about what you expect in terms of their behavior. Or it could be, going back a couple of slides, where you teach them these specific things. And a lot of times these come up as, we call them teachable moments, where a student actually does the wrong thing right now, and I'm going to stop what I'm doing and use that as a moment to educate everybody that was the wrong thing. Right, where the teacher or where the student uses too much informality with you, not enough barriers or boundaries to you. And so you would want to say, no, there's supposed to be a boundary there. That's not professional behavior. In the United States, we have that problem when the students write emails that just begins with yo, which is slang American for saying hey, or hi. Hi would be another bad one too. Hi, comma, can you please give me extra credit? And then it doesn't say thank you, Frank, or anything like that. So they're missing a header, they're missing the context, the whole thing has the wrong tone. So a teachable moment would be you receive that, and you don't just throw it away, you instruct the student, you mentor the student. This is wrong behavior, right? That's how we teach professionalism to students, is every time you see unprofessionalism, you grab it, and you make a big deal out of it. So you tell me, how does unprofessional behavior show up with Saudi students? It doesn't ever show up? Oh, it does? Is it in emails?
Yeah, but pretty much the same format. No heading or no
Sometimes
subject
emails,
line.
sometimes.
Sometimes emails. Do they ever, in person, do they ever have a professionalism problem? Do they interrupt you while you're in the middle of a conversation? Like you're sitting there talking to someone else and they come up and just start talking? Like, Right, that is rude behavior, and frankly, you should not let them get away with that.
Some of them, they might ask questions with the wrong tone.
Questions with the wrong tone, right? So it's a tone of disrespect, perhaps? Right, so I would call them on that. Sarcasm, yes, that can get in the way. I think every time you let that go, you're actually perpetuating it, you're inviting more. So number one, your own classroom management, you should stop that. But then I would make a big deal towards professionalism about this is not behavior that will be tolerated in the workplace. So therefore I will not tolerate it here. Right? In many ways, being a tough teacher, even though it's not fun for them, they need it. They need a tough teacher.